There has been at least one explosion outside Kabul airport and reports of gunfire. U.S. officials say it appears to be a suicide attack. Unconfirmed reports say there are several people dead and injured. Thousands of Afghans and foreign nationals have been gathering outside the airport for days now, desperate to flee the country after the Taliban takeover. The explosion comes after Western countries warned the area was a target for a potential terror attack by Islamic State militants. The United States and allies have urged civilians to leave the airport. Let's take you for the latest now to Kabul, to journalist Ali Latifi. Ali, you're joining us on the line. What more have you learned about what happened?
So I'm currently outside one of the hospitals where the injured are being transferred to, and we keep seeing ambulances and cars drive by bringing injured in. We've seen children come in injured. It seems right now that it's really just local residents directing traffic and making sure that the injured can make it into the hospital. We don't really see much of a Taliban presence right now. One of their police vehicles passed by, stopped to look, and then kept going. But right now, it's still just people scrambling to get the injured into the hospital.
What kind of injuries are you seeing?
The problem is they're being crowded around, so we can't see exactly the injuries. But we've seen people coming in, and we've seen cars being stopped and saying, we have injured, we need to get them in. And that's, right now it's just people coming in. The hospital has gurneys at the door waiting for people because it's a long road from that side of the airport. Because it's so crowded, because that much of that road is unpaved, it's going to take people a while to bring the injured to different hospitals in the city.
And what do you...
Also, the amount of crowds.
Go ahead.
Also, the amount of crowds will make it very difficult. If it's like it's been the last few days, there are thousands of people just lined up there, and cars, and it's a mainly dirt road. So people coming there, trying to get into the city, are going to face a lot of challenges, especially with sick and injured people in their vehicles.
And have you been able to talk to any of the people accompanying the injured? What are they telling you?
They're just telling me that there were, possibly tens of thousands near the gate where the explosion happened, and that, after that, it just became what usually happens after an explosion, where people run and are trying to, tend to the injured as quickly as possible. There were people that were waiting for hours and hours that day. And,
obviously, this was a soft target, though, the area outside the airport.
Right. And it's a big test of the Taliban, because one of their big sort of how they tried to sell themselves was, well, if we join the government or if we take over the government, then security won't be an issue anymore. And now we are seeing that obviously security is an issue. They weren't, even though the warnings were out there, they weren't, and they were the ones, them and the CIA-backed intelligence forces were the ones out on the streets. They weren't able to stop this from happening either.
So what does it signal, Ali?
It's a good question, because now we're going to see the Taliban's capabilities to address a situation like this. As I said, right now, I'm watching people on the street who are probably just shop owners and local residents directing the traffic, and ambulances coming this way right now, and they're trying to direct the traffic to get it to come to the entrance of the hospital as quickly as possible.
Now, obviously this is early days, and the situation is very chaotic, but who would want to attack Afghan civilians?
The so-called Islamic State is a good guess, because they are enemies of the Taliban, and this, again, will make the Taliban look bad. It will say, look, you took over and you couldn't provide security to your people.
But at the same time, of course, this was the U.S. president's biggest concern. It's also another blow for the U.S. and the coalition, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, completely, because this evacuation has been, a disaster from the start, and this is just, another part of that, because people were promised all of these visas from Germany and the UK and France and the US and all of these other places. They thought, unfortunately, a lot of people thought if I show up at the airport, maybe there'll be a chance that I could get on a plane and go somewhere.
Yes, a life and death situation for Afghans at the airport. Ali Latifi reporting on those breaking developments out of Kabul. Thank you for now, Ali. Appreciate it. And for viewers just joining us right now, we are covering breaking news at this hour. An apparent suicide blast has rocked Kabul's international airport. Smoke has been visible over the airport gate. You can see it here, where several people were reported killed. And it's where thousands had been waiting in hopes of escaping Afghanistan. And several Western officials had warned of an imminent terror attack. All right, let's take you now to journalist Frans Marti in Kabul. Have there been more details that you learned about?
There have been at least 2 explosions, apparently in this ditch right next to the road, one close to Abbey Gate, the gate where most Afghans try to get in, one close to a hotel frequented by foreigners, which was heavily secured. There have been several casualties, including at least 3 wounded US soldiers. There might be more suicide bombers in the area, or have been. That is the latest. There have been reports about shots being fired, but it was not clear in how far this was like a firefight with attackers, or might have been just like warning shots or soldiers reacting to perceived threats.
Was it a sizable explosion? Do we know that? And there's also reports of a second explosion?
What I have, there was a second explosion, according to my information. What I have is that it is at least 30 people wounded and killed. This is about the size, but details are still unclear. It seems to be that attackers on foot brought explosives. So we're talking about at best a few kilograms, but not a car bomb, according to my information. But this is all still hard to verify.
In terms of the Taliban, are they in control now? Will the area be evacuated? What do we know about that?
People fled from the scene. Obviously, there have been Taliban checkpoints nearby. What the status of the scene right now is hard to say. But honestly, it is also to be expected that at least some Afghans try to go back as soon as possible to the gate, fearing that they otherwise can't get in anymore. But yeah, it's chaotic scenes, and it's not exactly clear how it looks right now there.
Do we know if planes are still taking off at this stage?
Planes have been taking off right when the explosion happened, as far as I was informed. I myself am quite a distance away from the airport, can't hear or see anything at the moment, but it is likely that planes will still take off because, the evacuation has to be wrapped up. And it was anyway planned to get some of the refugees out during the next days, and then the last days to the deadline to get the soldiers out that are now securing the airfield.
Of course, the interesting, the striking thing about this is, of course, that this was anticipated. In the days leading up to this, officials have been warning people of the possibility that a terror attack is imminent. So these warnings were not heeded? What
has to be taken into account here is scenes were chaotic. thousands of people, it's impossible to control everyone. It was already before the Taliban took over Kabul, like completely preventing suicide attacks like this would only be possible in a complete police state where no movement is allowed. As long as there is some amount of free movement, there's like no way that there can be like absolute security. There have been reports, but with these chaotic scenes, it was like really extremely difficult to check people and to provide security in the area.
And in terms of as a target, I mean, this is probably the softest target there is in Kabul right now.
No, not really. I mean, you could like set off a bomb somewhere in the city where checkpoints barely check vehicles, but you don't have a crowd. So for headline grabbing, the Kabul airport was the best target, but like softer targets would be all around the city, just not same impact.
So who would want to do this? Who would want to attack civilians and make the news this way?
All signs point to the declared Islamic State. There's no other group that would be able and have the motivation to do that. Yesterday, a contact with contacts in the self-declared Islamic State told me that they intend to attack the people at the airport because they're deemed American spies and collaborators. So in their eyes, they're not civilians. When I checked a few minutes ago on social media channels of the self-declared Islamic State, there has been no claim of responsibility, but it is expected that this will come.
In our remaining moments together, are they competing for power?
Yes, of course. I mean, the self-declared Islamic State wants to get back, take territory, but now they're limited to underground networks. So they have the capability to stage such attacks, but they are a fringe group. So I mean, we're not talking that they are a real threat to the Taliban right now. They have the aspiration to contest them, that for sure, but the capabilities is largely limited to such asymmetric attacks.
Right, asymmetric attacks. Franz Marti reporting from Kabul on those breaking developments. Thank you very much.